Hi guys, I hope you guys are having a good day so far. Today we're gonna look at chain rule, which is super important for Calc AB and Calc BC. You're gonna need to know it if you want to become a master at derivatives, which you should. You need to be a master at derivatives if you want to get 5 on the AP test. Now, let's get into it. So if we have a equation like this, y equals f of x, f of g of x, how do we take the derivative of that? Well, this recipe in red right here, in this red box, is what you need to memorize. That is chain rule, okay? So y prime, the derivative of y, equals f prime of g of x times g prime of x. And again, the primes are just derivative of. So, this looks a little bit confusing at first, but we have to think about it as outer and inner functions. So f of x is the outer function, g of x is the inner function. So f of x is the outer, and g of x is the inner. So remember this. This will make it a lot easier when we do our examples. First example, y equals 3x plus 2 all to the fifth power. Now, let's remember our recipe. Our f prime of g of x times g prime of x equals y prime. I should have put the y first. It's okay. Okay. Now, we need to get our ingredients set up. So remember what I said, outer and inner function, right? So f of x and g of x. G of x is the inner function, f of x is the outer function. Let's start with g of x because that's a little bit easier to see. G of x is the inner function. The inner function is 3x plus 2. Now, f of x is the outer function, right? So if we replace 3x plus 2, so if this is g of x to the fifth, then f of x would be the outer function, which is just x to the fifth. Okay? Now, we have our f of x and g of x. Now, to use our recipe, we need f prime of x and g prime of x. So let's write that down. So f prime of x, using our power rule, would be 5x to the fourth power. G prime of x would be 3, using just power rule. If you're a little bit shaky on power rule, I have a video on that. You should watch that. Make sure you're solid in power rule. So now that we have all of our ingredients to our recipe, we can start plugging things in. F prime of g of x. F prime is 5x to the fourth. So 5 of g of x. G of x is 3x plus 2 to the fourth times g prime of x. We said g prime of x was 3. So this would equal 15 to the 3x plus 2 over 4. And if you're a little bit confused on how I'm, getting f of x and g of x, you should review composite fractions. If you guys want, I'll make a video on that. But not fractions, functions. Sorry, composite functions. Super important for chain rule. Okay, make sure you're solid on both power rule and composite functions. You need to know. If you guys are struggling with it, just let me know. I'll make a video on that. But maybe I'm sure there's a Khan Academy video somewhere of composite functions. But here we go. Now, this is our answer, right? 15 times 3x plus 2 all to the fourth. What is this? Well, we just found the derivative of y. So this 15 times 3x plus 2 to the fourth, that's the derivative of y. So this equation right here that I circled in red, this down here, this is the derivative of that. Okay, now let's move on to our next question. A little bit trickier now. Y equals sine of 4x. Okay, let's write down our recipe again. It'd be f prime of g of x times g prime of x. Okay, now f of x. Oh, let me use, what did I use last time? What color? Pink? Okay. F of x and g of x. Let's start with our Inner function 4x, 4x. Our outer function is sine, so sine x. F prime of x equals, and then g prime of x equals, well, g prime is just 4, right? The derivative of 4x equals 4. And f prime, the derivative of sine, is cosine. Use a little bit of our trig knowledge there. So now, again, simple. We just plug it into our recipe. F prime, so cosine of g of x is 4x, times g prime of x is 4 times 4. So our answer is 4 cosine of 4x. So that means y prime, the derivative of this function up here, is equal to 4 cosine 4x. Oops, 4x. Okay, so I hope this is making a little bit more sense now, right? All we're doing is finding the ingredients and then plugging it into our master recipe. The only calculus you're really doing here is finding the derivatives of f of x and g of x. Let's move on to our next question. A little bit harder. Y equals e to the x squared plus 3x. Again, I still do this when I take, when I take tests. I still write down the recipe just because I'm scared I'll make a mistake. You don't have to, but I do just to make sure. So I keep forgetting, we have to use pink. F of x and g of x. Well, g of x is our inner function, which would be this right here, x squared plus 3x, which makes our outer function e to the x. Now, we'd find our derivatives, f prime of x and g prime of x. F prime of x, well, the derivative of e to the x is just e to the x, and the derivative of x squared plus 3x using power rule, 2x plus 3. And I can't stress this enough, calculus is built on top of each other, so you need to have a knowledge of both composite functions and power rule to really get a grip on chain rule. You can't just skip straight to chain rule. So if you're having trouble with any of these steps, any power rule, or you can't figure out how I'm finding out inner and outer functions, then please review power rule and chain rule, or power rule and composite functions before you watch chain rule. Trust me, it'll make chain rule so much easier. Okay. Now we have all of our ingredients. Let's put it all into our recipe. So f prime of g of x, well, f prime is e to the x. G of x is x squared plus 3x times g prime of x. G prime of x is 2x plus 3. So what does that give us? Oh, we don't need to simplify. Oh, wait. Parentheses. Always put parentheses. So this is our answer, right? So let me just write this better. Y prime, the derivative of this function up here, is e to the x squared plus 3x times 2x plus 3. Make sure you put parentheses. I didn't put parentheses up there. It would have been wrong, right? Because of PEMDAS. So here we go. That's our answer. This is the derivative of that function up there. Now, this last problem is probably one of the hardest you'll see regarding chain rule for now. So let's walk through this. Let's walk through this one a little bit slower. So, again, use our recipe. F prime of g of x times g prime of x. I know it's annoying to always write it out, but I promise it makes things a lot easier. You're less likely to make mistakes. So f of x, g of x. Well, g of x is the inner function, so 2x. And then f of x is tan cubed of x. Okay, now, I don't know if you see a problem, but you're going to need to use double chain rule for this, which is a little bit annoying. It's a lot more work, but you have to do what you have to do, right? So f prime of x. This is why we need to use double chain rule, because of f prime of x. This is also a composite function. So let's break this down. Double chain rule. Now, it's a little bit, a lot more work, but you have to do it. So let's break this down again, right? Because this is a composite function. Tan cubed x. You can't take the derivative of that just normally. So I'm just going to call it u of x, right? Outer function o of x and inner function. Well, the inner function is tan x and the outer function is x cubed. Why? Well, because if it was o of I of x, right, it would just be tan cubed, or tan x cubed, which is the same as tan cubed x. So that's how I know what my inner and outer functions are. Okay. Now that we have that total, we're just going to do a chain rule inside of a chain rule. So we're going to find O prime of x. It's the same exact steps, 3x squared, and then I prime of x, which is just secant squared x. You need to memorize those trig derivatives. Now we put it into our big recipe. So outer function, so O prime, so 3 of g of x, which is I of x in this case, tan x squared times g prime of x, which is I prime of x in this case, secant squared x. Okay. So we just found the derivative of tan cubed of x. Okay, that's the derivative. And now that we have that, we can write that in here, right? Because f prime of x is just the derivative of f of x. So that's what we needed to do that chain rule for. And now g prime of x is just 2. Right, that's just simple. Now I'm going to erase this now so we have a little bit more space. There we go. Okay, so now let's do our chain rule. Again, put all our ingredients back into our formula, f prime of x, so 3. I'm going to write, I'm going to make it like this, right? 3 tan squared x times secant squared x, because I feel like that's a little bit easier for me to read. Okay, so I just move that over here. There's this extra equal sign. There we go. So this function and the other function is the same. Just for me, I like it like this. Whatever you prefer. So tan squared of x, but it's the f prime of g of x. So g of x is 2x, we said, times secant squared of x, which is g of x again, 2x, multiplied by g prime of x, and we said g prime of x was 2. So our final answer would be 6 tan squared 2x secant squared 2x. And again, this is the derivative of that function, so I'll make it a little bit more clear. Y prime is 6 tan squared 2x secant squared 2x. Okay. And that was a lot of work. We had to do chain rule twice, but I guess it's a little bit satisfying to see it all come together like this. This is our answer. And this is probably one of the hardest you'll have to do, double chain rule. But we walked through pretty much every question type you'd ever have to face. So I hope this video helped you. If you have any questions, put them in comments below. If you have any video ideas, anything you have trouble with, anything you want me to review, put them in the comments. I'll respond to as many as I can. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.